Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Off the Couch with Dr. Sherri, yours truly. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you don't get a chance to join, don't worry. I want you to watch the replay, and I'd love to hear your comments. Private message me or just comment in the thread below the video, and let me know if any of this resonates with you. So today we are going to talk about the imposter syndrome. Now, probably lots of you have heard of this, the imposter syndrome. And my guess is there's some of you that don't really know what it is. Well, it's a fancy phrase, the imposter syndrome, that was made up for something that is all too common to the human experience. And I would venture to say that if you've never experienced the imposter syndrome, you are in the deep, deep, deep minority. People everywhere that I've talked to, myself included, I'm going to share a little story with you, have realized the power of the imposter syndrome. So what is it? What is the imposter syndrome? And feel free to put in the comments what your experience has been so that I can help to address that, because we're not only going to talk about what it is, but we're going to talk about what it really is, and then we're going to talk about what you can do with it to make it that driving force in your life that actually is a benefit or an asset to you, as opposed to a liability like most people see it, right? So the imposter syndrome is really when you believe that you are not deserving of your success. I'm going to rephrase this in a couple of ways to see which ones resonate with you. So the first one is you believe, or you have a thought, I'll say that, it's not a belief, you have a thought that comes through your head that you are not deserving of your success. Maybe the imposter syndrome to you is that you have the idea, again, ideas, thoughts, not beliefs, not solidly held beliefs, but maybe you have the idea that your accomplishments are luck, right? Or sheer chance you've achieved the things in life that you've achieved. That is a telltale sign that the imposter syndrome is coming in heavy and strong. And again, this doesn't just apply to people in, hey, John Bridgen, thanks for stopping by. I love your little smiley face with the cowboy hat. I bet that cowboy doesn't have imposter syndrome. Actually, most cowboys probably do. That's the bravado speaking, right? So the imposter syndrome is this sense that I am not responsible, truly. I'm not responsible for my success, my accomplishments. In fact, some people would take it so far as to say, I'm a fraud, and they are going to find me out. You know, I was doing some research on this topic over the last couple of days, and I found a quote from Maya Angelou. And if you don't know who she is, she's a brilliant author. But she actually said in an interview, she said, I've written 11 books. And she's like, my next one's about to come out. And I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not quoting her because I don't want to read it from a piece of paper. But she said, I've written 11 books and my 12th one's about to come out. And I'm afraid that they're going to find out I've been running a game on them, that they're going to discover I'm a fraud, that I've pulled the wool over their eyes, essentially, right? So even somebody as accomplished as that brilliant author, Maya Angelou, she is not immune to the imposter syndrome, right? It's in all of us. It's something that each of us has to contend with. And I'll share a little story with you about me really quick, just to exemplify the point. So the imposter syndrome for me I used to lay it on myself heavy and thick. So I had, after high school, I had 4 opportunities to walk for graduation for varying degrees, college and graduate school. And do you know that I did not walk for a single one of my college or graduate degrees? Not one. And I'll tell you why. Because at that point, I really was thinking, who am I? Who am I to have this doctorate? What do I know? Who am I to call myself Dr. Sherri, right? That just means I stayed in school longer than a lot of people, right? That just means I spent a lot of money. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm smart. But what I did is I started to really let that unravel what I thought about myself and really minimized all of the effort and all of the accomplishments that I gave into that process, right? And so that's the imposter syndrome. When we start to give our accomplishments away, when we start to give our successes away to chance, to luck, to some fortune that is otherwise not us, that's the imposter syndrome. So I'm going to share with you what the imposter syndrome really is and what you can do about it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I want you to know this, that the imposter syndrome is really all about you, right? So it means you're focusing all on you. So I don't know what you do. A couple of you have joined me here, John. You said, hey, so I'll use you as an example. Not that you have the imposter syndrome, but you're a photographer. You're a brilliant photographer, right? And you've had several accomplishments, and you give classes, and you've gotten a lot of accolades, and you've gotten testimonials from people who have just been so impressed by you and your work, right? And so for you, if you were to say, you know what, that's just all chance. That's just, I'm a fraud. I'm going to be found out. That's not true. That's basically you taking on this thought, again, this thought that comes across your mind about being an imposter as the truth. And you're also focusing on you. You're focusing on who you are and who you're not, okay? So the imposter syndrome really is kind of a selfish thing if you think about it. Because if we are so busy focused on what we think about ourselves, we're missing out on the opportunity to serve people with the amazing brilliance we've been gifted with. Each of us has been gifted with a different set of gifts, a different set of brilliances, as I call them, that allows us to serve people. And so what happens is we take our eyes off that target, right? We end up taking our eyes off of the target of the people that we're supposed to serve. Like right now, I'm talking to you guys, and I'm sharing a message because I believe in it. I'm sharing a message because I've experienced it. I'm sharing the message because I want you to know that you're not alone, right? I want other people to understand that this is a common experience, and I want to be able to give you some tools that I've used to successfully use the imposter syndrome as an asset and not a liability, right? But if I take my eye off of my why, and I did not intend the rhyme there, but if I take my eye off of my why, which is you're my why, and I start to focus on me, and I start to evaluate me and my character and whether or not my successes or accomplishments are indeed a reflection of me and a reflection of the gifts that I have to offer the world, and I start to doubt that, I'm forgetting my purpose. I'm forgetting my why. I'm forgetting you. And that's not fair to you. So that is the very, very first thing that you can do when you start to feel those thoughts come on about being an imposter, being a fraud. Look, we have all thought them. I can tell you in my years of talking with people day in, day out, from young to old, not too young, because we typically don't start evaluating ourselves that way until we're in our early teen years. But we all start to think that we're a fraud in some way, and we're going to be found out. And I got to tell you, what's the worst that could happen if you're found out? I don't even know what that means, by the way. When I've said it to myself in the past, I'm going to be found out. Found out for what? Found out that I love talking to people. Found out for the fact that I have a desire to serve other people, that I have a desire to help them live meaningful and fulfilled lives. Great. Go ahead and find me out. See, when you put that imposter syndrome in its place, it doesn't have that power over you. It doesn't have that authority over you. And I would encourage you, again, I've said this before, I use this phrase a lot of times because I really believe in it. I really believe in the ability of our minds to take on and capture thoughts that come in and make them our identity, right? So if we invite that thought of I'm a fraud, I'm not a success, or my success is due to chance, or my accomplishments aren't that big of a deal, if we latch onto that, essentially what we're doing is inviting those thoughts in for a cup of coffee. And before long, we start to believe it is truth. And then what happens when you start to believe that you really are an imposter, that you really are a fraud, that you don't know what you're talking about, that you don't know what you're doing, that you're not the best at what you do? When those thoughts come into your head and you start to believe that, you stop doing the very thing you were created to do. And I got to tell you, that's fear, right? The imposter syndrome is nothing but an experience of fear that comes in and tries to take over. And it's really up to us to put it in its place and say, wait a second, that's not the truth, right? So I've heard from people before, well, isn't there a line between being humble and being braggadocious, so to speak, like, oh, look at me. So that's a huge spectrum, right? Going, oh, I'm nothing, I'm a fraud. All of that was due to chance, to, wow, look at me, I'm amazing. There's a vast variety of thoughts that lie in there that don't have to be the imposter syndrome. Again, that's on the far end of the spectrum, and that's not the level playing field. The middle ground is what you want to find. And the middle ground is, I am humble. I know I make mistakes. I know that I am not always going to get everything right. I know I'm going to mess something up. I know I'm going to make a mistake, and that's okay because I'm human. That's expected. It's not just okay, it's expected, right? And to find that middle ground that says, I am human, I am imperfect, I'm actually gloriously imperfect. Thank you very much. And I don't have to brag about my accomplishments, right? That's the other end of the spectrum. I don't have to brag about them. I'm successful because I focus on the people that I'm serving. So whatever it is that you're doing, if you work at a grocery store, if you work at a gas station, or if you work in finance, or if you work, if you're a speaker like me, or you're a photographer like John, or you're an amazing hairstylist like Jennifer, whatever it is, when you keep your eyes and your thoughts, right, your mind's eye, focused on who you're serving and focused on giving them your best, this is when the imposter syndrome can't possibly lay its eggs in your brain and fester, right? I have a comment here, very interesting. I sometimes feel like my lifestyle and appearance, laid back, country, cowboy type, takes away from my abilities and creativity. I tend to argue when someone says I'm an artist. Is this the same thing? That is a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, it kind of is the same thing. It's about, again, finding that fine line, that common ground between bragging and being so humble that you're self-defacing, right? So I would encourage you that that's part of your identity, right? Your lifestyle and appearance, it's part of who you are, right? And it really has zero bearing on what you do. And I'll add this, people who focus, this is for those of you listening, I need to encourage you with this today. This thought just came into my mind. People who focus on who you are not or who they believe you are not don't know who they are. All right, I'm going to say that again. People who focus on who you are not or who they believe you are not, those people that kind of reinforce that imposter syndrome idea, they do not know who they are. Because if they knew who they were and they knew what they had to offer the world, they would again shift their lens, come back and focus on going and delivering that, serving other people with that gift. Remember, whenever you start to turn inward with those thoughts, those imposter thoughts, it's really kind of an egotistical thing. We're so focused on ourselves that we can't possibly give our best to other people. So when I speak and I make blunders, I was just telling somebody the other day, anytime before I speak, I get nervous. And I'll tell you, the day that I stop getting nervous is the day that I want you to hold me to task and say, it's time for you to stop speaking, Sherri. Because I don't have all of the answers. All I know is what I can speak is what's on my heart, right? I'm going to make blunders. I'm going to have word salad, as my friend Crystal likes to say. I'm going to say some things that maybe I'll even wish I could take back later. It happens. That's what happens in life. That's what happens when you're gloriously imperfect, like all of us are, right? And so when I accept that and embrace that you are no different than me, you could have this magnificent career. Look again back at that example with Maya Angelou. She's this accomplished author and she thinks sometimes she's a fraud, right? It affects all of us. And so there is none of us that are immune to that. But again, the first thing you can do to combat that, or not even to combat it, I would encourage you not to fight it. Use it as fuel for your betterment. First, redirect that energy when you start to feel those thoughts coming into your head. Oh, this is keeping me from doing what I'm intended to do. This is keeping me from doing what I'm intended to do the way I'm intended to do it, and to the best of my ability to serve the people that I know I can serve with this gift that nobody else has to offer in the way that I have to offer it, right? You can be in the same business as a million other, let's say you're in the beauty industry. There are a gazillion beauty options out there, right? But nobody does what you do, the way that you do it, and why you do it, right? So there's nothing about being an imposter. And if we can back up just a second, the root of the imposter syndrome, by the way, it's not just some random thought that comes into your head. It comes because you're focused on comparing yourself to other people, right? And whether or not you're as equally deserving as they are. You see, we see what goes on outside. We never ever see what goes on inside of somebody. And so what we tend to do is we compare what we believe to be the worst of ourselves to what we believe to be the best of someone else. Totally inaccurate comparison, right? We say, I'm going to take this flaw and look at this other person and look how amazing they are. That is not an accurate or a valid comparison, but that's where the root of the imposter syndrome comes from, because we're looking at other people and we're going, oh, I don't belong on the same playing field as they. Why don't you, right? I said earlier, who am I, right? I've asked myself before, who am I to be a speaker? Who am I to do Facebook live shows? Who am I to write a book? Who am I not to be? That's a desire. It's a passion in my heart. I have a yearning for learning more all of the time and a desire to share that with you. And so who am I not to do that? I better do that, or I'm not going to live a meaningful and fulfilled life. I have another comment here. Let me see if I can scroll down. That's why there are so many, because we all do things differently. That's absolutely right, Jennifer. Everybody does things differently, and every person is not for you. You know, there's a lot of people that have told me in the past that maybe not directly, but maybe what I have to say isn't for them. And that's okay, because there is somebody else for them to share a message that they need to hear. That doesn't need to threaten me, right? That's just not the right fit for me. And so the people that I need to reach, my responsibility is not to focus on myself and how horrible I might be, or how undeserving I might be, or how not qualified I might be. My obligation is to take my passion, do it deliberately, do it diligently, research, do what I need to do, right? My due diligence in preparing for speaking engagements or working with people in video coaching one-on-one. My due diligence is preparing for those things, right? And so there's preparation, and then there's acceptance of the fact that mistakes and flaws and things like that are going to happen. And that doesn't make me or you an imposter. It makes you gloriously human. And so I'm going to leave you with that. When you find that the imposter syndrome thoughts are coming into your head, shift it around. It's not about you. It's about the people you serve. And you cannot be genuine and authentic if you're focused on you. You've got to focus on the people that you were meant to serve, so that you can find that meaning and purpose in life that you desperately deserve. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm so grateful to have this platform. Thanks, Facebook, for providing the video platform, and you guys for tuning in. Share with your friends. Tune in next week, Tuesday, 12:30. Every Tuesday at 12:30, I'm live. And until then, I can't wait to see you where I'm shifting perspectives and speaking life. Take care, everyone.